Rabbi Zalkazunsan began the Farbrengen today, this afternoon, with the pasuk Be'ashtei Osor Chodesh Be'echad LaChodesh, in the 11th month, in the first day, and as the pasuk goes on, that is the day when Moshe Hoyil Moshe Bayer SaTorah Azois, that is the day when Moshe explained all of Torah. What day is that? The first day of the 11th month, Rosh Chodesh Shvat. And what did Moshe relate to Eden? Moshe related to Eden Mishneh Torah, Chumash Dvarim, which Chumash Dvarim really contains within it all the mitzvahs which were already mentioned previously in the four Chumashim that come before Dvarim, as well as whatever else is added in Chumash Dvarim. And all of this was accomplished on this day, on the day of the first day of the 11th month. And how does the Dvarim begin? Eila hadvarim. Eila is an expression when we want to pinpoint on something which is obvious and can be seen. That is when you use the expression Eila, this is. In other words, Torah was given by Moshe, through Moshe rather. And the Torah that Moshe reviewed was in a way of Eila, that everybody should be able to understand it and everybody should be able to grasp it. Though, when we're talking in Torah, we know that Torah is divided into various categories. There is Pshat, Remes, Drush, and Soid. So the chelik of Pshat in Torah, this is something which is accessible to everyone. However, when we are talking about the other halakim in Torah, the other parts in Torah, that is not accessible to everyone. However, in Torah itself, when we're talking about the category in Torah of halacha in Torah, halacha must be the accurate psak din. And when we have an accurate psak din in halacha in Torah, then it's definitely based on all the categories of Torah, on all the components of Torah. In other words, a halacha in Torah, this is the way the halacha should be. This is the right halacha, mitzad pshat, mitzad drush, and mitzad soid. All categories in Torah, pshat, remes, drush, and soid, are all agreeable that this is the proper halacha. So when we have a halacha in Torah, that means that we have it, all parts of Torah combined in here, agreeing that this is the halacha so in Torah. What does this mean to us? What is the hero of all of this to us? Especially based on the word of the Alter Rebbe, that Ayidaf leben mit der Zeit, which means we have to take our heroes from the days which we are from Torah, that relate to the days that we are in right now. Every Yid has a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu within him. And this spark of Moshe Rabbeinu that's within him, when it comes this day, the first day in the 11th month, it's the time to strive to Torah, to the Eila HaDvarim, to the entire Mishneh Torah, which is the contents of all of Torah, which was related through Moshe. And as Chazal used the expression, L'gabe Moshe milse zutrasehi, when we're talking about Moshe, it's something which is not hard for him. It's an expression of Chazal, and the Gemara explains the pasuk, V'ata Yisrael, Ma Hashem Elokecha she'el mimoch. Now Yidden, what does the Rebbe ask from you? All he's asking is Kiyim liyiras Hashem Elokecha. So the Gemara asks, Otu Yira Milsa Zutrasi. Torah says all that the Rebbe is asking from Yidden is that he's asking to be God-fearing. Is then God-fearing something so easy and something so simple? The Gemara responds, yes. L'gabe Moshe, when we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, Milsa Zutrasi. For Moshe, it's something which is easy for him to achieve. Here comes the famous Alter Rebbe in Tanya, where Alter Rebbe asks, but the Pasuk is talking not only to Moshe, the Pasuk is talking to every Yid. And this is where Alter Rebbe introduces the idea that every Yid has a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu within him. So the Rebbe is employing the words of Chazal, that for Moshe it's something easy to accept, something accessible, something easy to reach to. Now when we're talking about the Moshe in every Yid, it's the same idea. Now that when we are coming in these days, the surrounding days, to Rosh Chodesh, today is Rosh Chodesh Shvat, and the days around Rosh Chodesh Shvat, these are the days when we have to go through this concept of, just like by Moshe Rabbeinu then, this was the day when Moshe began to explain Torah and to give Torah to Yidden, Hoyel Moshe, Bayeres HaTorah Azois, to explain all of Torah, which all of Torah is included in Mishnah Torah, and Chumash Devarim. This same concept is to, we have to go through it now when we are going through the same days. In other words, to strive to go through all of Torah, and in a way of Eila, in a way that we should be able to see it, to point at it, to have access to it. How much more so is it when the day of Rosh Chodesh Shvat comes out to be on a Shabbos? Shabbos is a special day, as we know. Shabbos is a day of Simcha, and Shabbos is a day of Oineg. Over Yom Simchaschem, your days of Simcha, the Torah says. Chazal interpret that it means Elu HaShabbos, and the same thing Chazal interpret and explain at length how Shabbos there's a mitzvah of Oineg, pleasantness. So Shabbos we have a combination of Simcha and of Oineg, and especially that this day includes this day of Rosh Chodesh. Why is it called Rosh Chodesh? It's the head of the month. What's the pshat? It's the head of the month. It contains within it all what's happening in the entire month, and especially the days of special events, like the day of Yud Shvat, the Asiri Yeh Kodesh, which will be forthcoming, and especially this year, that the day of Yud Shvat is such a special one. The day of Yud Shvat, that it's 40 years since the passing of the Farbrengen Rebbe. And now we're reaching to a level of doing the Avodah in a way of Leiv Lodas, V'inayim Lerois, Vaznayim Lishmoya. In other words, as Chazal interpret the pasuk which Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Yidden after being 40 years in the Midbar, that after 40 years, that is when Koyim Inish Adaite the Rabbe, that is when somebody comes to the Das, can grasp the understanding of the theory of his Rav. And based on that, Chazal bring out Ben Arboyim Libino. When one comes to 40, that is when he comes to Bina, gets a proper in-depth level of understanding. There's a little bit added on even those that are not 40 yet, but nonetheless they are being mekabel, they are being taught from their teachers and from their mashpiyim and from their malamdim and so forth. So altogether, in other words, by adding the ages of those who are teaching them, so there is an age of 40 even to the one who is not 40 as yet. So that's why everyone now has this special opportunity of reaching to a deeper and deeper insight and understanding in all of these inyanim. Especially when we're talking about the Farbrengen Rebbe. Farbrengen Rebbe, who fulfilled what his name stood for. His name was Yosef, and his avodah was Yosef Hashem Li Bein Acher. Here we know the famous taich of the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek taiches what was the avodah of Yosef. The avodah of Yosef was Yosef Hashem Li Bein Acher. That the one who is in the level of an Acher, he's considered an outsider. Even that one, what does Yosef do? Yosef sees to add him on. Yosef means to add on, to increase. That he too should become added on and increased to be considered a bein to the Eibishter. And when we're talking about Acher, it doesn't necessarily have to mean doesn't necessarily have to mean somebody who is real far. There could be an acher in levels of kedusha as well. In other words, in the avodah of Yosef, the avodah of the Frierdiker Rebbe was, and this is what he instituted, this is what he demanded from us, is to reach out to everyone. Anyone that can only be defined in the level of an acher, within the simple sense of an acher, or even in a higher level of acher, in a spiritual level of an acher, and to see to it that it becomes obvious that he's a ben to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Avodas Hashem is in two angles. There's the Avodas Hashem in Sur Merah, and there's Avodas Hashem in Asay Tov. Staying away from bad, and being attached to the good. And this in itself we also find in Chumash Dvarim, as Moshe Rabbeinu began Chumash Dvarim. Eila Dvarim Asher Diber Moshe begins, and then mentions several places, and as Rashi interprets it, it doesn't really mean there were no such places, but he's referring to several undesirable inyanim which Yidden did throughout the years. And Moshe Rabbeinu is here criticizing them for what they did throughout all these years. What does this mean? He's bringing out the Sur Merah. And once we have already accomplished the Sur Merah, then we can achieve Asay Tov. And as the Rebbe is saying, the Sur Merah, that it was Yidden are not at a level where they have to be told Sur Merah. In order that their Asay Tov should be as it should be, that is why we are also reminded the Sur Merah. But the Sur Merah was already corrected. And as we find all these things which Moshe Rabbeinu mentions to the Yidden, which the worst of all of them is Chet HaEgel, that the Yidden turned away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and turned to Avodah Zarah. And nonetheless, even at Chet HaEgel, we also find in Chumash that Moshe Rabbeinu insisted to the Rebishter, and the Rebishter forgave the Yidden as the Rebishter expressed himself, Salachti Kidvarecha. So what is the whole idea of the Sur Merah? We are told about this Sur Merah so that the Asay Tov will be done in a proper and in a positive way. Especially that we are in Parshas Ve'era. Parshas Ve'era comes as a continuity, as a hemshech to Parshas Shmos. In Parshas Shmos, Moshe Rabbeinu was complaining to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hatzei lo hitzalta. He did not make it better for Yidden. And here, in Va'era, the Rebbe is responding. The Rebbe is telling him, Va'era el Avraham, Yitzchak vel Yaakov. Shmi Hashem lo nedaiti lahem. What does Rashi say on Va'era? Rashi says on Va'era el ha'avos. So everybody asked this famous sikha from the Rebbe from many years ago. The Rebbe referred to it today briefly. Anyone that learns the pasuk and sees that the pasuk says Va'era Avram el Yitzchak vel Yaakov, so everybody knows that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are the Avos. Why is there a need for Rashi to mention Va'era el Avos? Maybe he revealed himself, made himself seen to whom? To the Avos. Naturally, we look into the hemshech of the pasuk. We see the hemshech of the pasuk talks about Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, so it's self-understood that the Rebbe made himself seen to the others. And as it's explained, and the Rebbe brought it out previously and referred to it today again, why did the Rebbe reveal himself to them? Not because of the fact that they were Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, because of the fact that they are our others. In other words, not mitzad them personal, because of them personal, but because of the fact, due to the fact that they are our avos. What's the pshat? They are our avos. What does that mean? If they are our avos, we inherit it from them. So therefore, just like the Rebishter has given this special koyach that he made himself seen, he envisioned himself to the avos, va'era lo avos. The same thing is the Rebishter is making himself seen to each and every yid. And each and every yid is getting this source of strength from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But how does the pasuk here continue? Ushmi Hashem loy nodaiti lahem. The Rebbe is saying that to the others, he did not identify himself with the Shem Havaya. But to us now that we are already after Matan Torah, the Rebbe does reveal himself to us with the Shem Havaya. So now when a Yid comes and tightness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hatzei lo hitzalta es hamecha, you didn't take us out. You didn't make it easier for us. You didn't rescue your nation. So Adarabbe. Now the answer to that is Va'eiro. The Rebbe is making himself seen, and to whom? To Avraham, Yitzchak, V'Yankov, and to Avraham, Yitzchak, V'Yankov, because they are others, and whatever happened to others is Maisa others, similar bonim. So it's happening again to us, that the Rebbe is making himself seen to us, giving us strength, that we should be able to hold out the Golas, and go out of Golas, as we find in these Sedras, the four expressions of Geula, and not only are there four expressions of Geula, but there's also a fifth expression of Geula. And this fifth expression of Geula will come into action when the Rebbe will take us out of this present Golus. And here the Rebbe referred to a halacha in Rambam, to the Nyonim Rambam which we are learning these days. Now that we're learning the halachas of Kiddush HaChodesh, setting the new moon, and the entire process and the procedure, how every month was set. The Rambam describes it in fullest detail. And as we know, this was done by the Jewish Beis Din, by the Jewish court, and not only was it done during the times of the second Beis HaMikdash, but even for a long period after the second Beis HaMikdash, there was still this concept of the Beis Din setting the new month. Now there is a Chazal. Chazal say, Atem, that setting the new moon, the new month, which is based on the new moon, when the new moon is seen, was given over totally to Beis Din. Atem, you, derived from a pasuk. The pasuk says oisam, and oisam should be spelled with a vav. When oisam is spelled without a vav, it could be read atem. So Chazal derive from this atem afilu mutoyin, even if Beis Din makes a mistake. Atem afilu shoygigin, even if they unintentionally figured it out wrong. Atem afilu anusim, even if they were forced to pass in this way. There is another expression, atem afilu mizidin. Even intentionally, you did it wrong. If Beis Din proclaimed that this is the new month begins. The Rambam does not bring out this fact of atem afilu mizidin. However, it's brought in Chazal, and it's often quoted in Chassidus. And when Chassidus brings it, Chassidus is out to explain the great power that a Yid has. That the Rebbe has given Yidden such great koiches, and he relies on the great koiches that were given to Yidden. That atem afilu mizidin, even when Yidden b'mezid, mezid means intentionally, when intentionally the psak was not as it should be, but if Beis Din proclaimed that this is the new month, the halacha remains that way. So the Rebbe took apart this halacha today and asked, the Rambam Taka doesn't bring it, but being that this halacha is based on the power of Yidden, on the koyach of Yidden, so definitely the Rambam will not mind that we want to understand this halacha, and we are regarding to this halacha, paying attention to it. What happened to say that the new month was proclaimed wrong and it was intentionally? What was the system? System was that witness would come and Beis Din would question them. And they had to go through an entire process of being questioned by Beis Din. And if Beis Din found that everything is correct, Beis Din would rely on them and announce and proclaim the new month. Now if they are mizidin, which means b'mezid, intentionally they are saying something wrong, the witness, so something is wrong with these witnesses. Such witnesses are not acceptable. If Beis Din is taking apart the witness, and Beis Din is realizing that these witness are intentionally saying something which is not so, then we cannot rely on such edus. This is not a kosher edus. Should we learn that the atem mizidin, the intentional wrongdoing, was done on the part of the Beis Din? So again, how can such a Beis Din proclaim a new month? So anyways, this is something which requires explanation. But again, what we derive from this halacha is the great power, the great koyach which the Rebbe has given into Yid. The Rebbe again continued and stressed very strongly specialty of this year, that this is a year of 40 years, and specialty of the significance of the number of 40, as we had already mentioned, and how we are to prepare ourselves for this auspicious day, special day in the month of Shvat, the day of Yud Shvat, the day of Asiri Yeh Kodesh. The Rebbe continued. The Rebbe said that it's customary always that we relate in the Farbrengen to an inyan of poyel, to an inyan of action. Therefore, the Rebbe is asking that it would be appropriate and proper that in honor of commemorating 40 years since the Frierdiker Rebbe passed away, to found new moistes, new institutions, or to expand existing institutions, or to add on new departments to the existing institutions. And the Rebbe expressed himself that he hopes that when all of this is done, we will reach to a total of 1,000 new additions or expansions or new departments and so forth. The Rebbe also added on that from an account, which is still an account of the Frierdiker Rebbe, a charitable account, as the Rebbe refers to it, Kupas Rabbeinu, a participation will be given to all those who will notify that they are starting something new, or they are expanding, or starting a new department and so forth. And the participation will be given in a number of 40. But also kept on stressing that being that mefakchen al tzorchei tzibur b'Shabbos, we are in charge of in public matters on Shabbos, so therefore it's only appropriate to talk about this as well. But also urge the importance of Chassidische Farbrengens, and back to these additional moistes or additional institutions or expansion of institutions that could be on all levels, on a level of Torah, or a level of Avodah, or on the level of Gemilas Chasadim. On any one of these levels. And in fact, right here we are now in the house, it's this Beis HaMedrash where the Frierdiker Rebbe has spent the last 10 years of his life, and this is where he was involved in all of these three areas, the area of Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. The Rebbe, I think it was early in the Farbrengen, also referred to Parshas HaShavua, that in this Parsha the Torah tells us about Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. And Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam are also reflecting the three pillars of Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. Moshe's inyan was Torah, Aaron's inyan was Avodah, and Miriam's inyan was Gemilas Chasadim. And Avodah v'Yid is to convert from Mar, Miriam meaning Mar, bitter, that it should no longer be bitter, but on the contrary, it should become a source of chesed, and then a flow of chesed and hashpah. That applied here the expression kimar midli, which is used in the positive way, where it's relating to drops of rain which are coming down. And when rain comes, it's something positive, something which is helping us for the survival, so that fruit should grow and things should run properly. It's like a mentioning about the inyan of rain. Also somewhere in the Farbrengen, the Rebbe was referring to the winter months, the Yemais HaGshamim, that what is the whole idea of Geshem? Geshem reminds us on Torah. Because Torah is also compared to water, just like water flows from high down, it's the same way Torah. Getting back to our inyan, Rebbe is very strongly urging for the expansion of new institutions and for the development of new institutions. And here the Rebbe brings the Gemara, that the Gemara tells us in Bava Basra
Gemara there tells us Hanoitel Pruta Me'iyev. If somebody gets a sent from Iyuv Mizbarech, it brings them bracha. So the same thing by participation of this Kupas Rabbeinu, funds from Kupas Rabbeinu, this will bring bracha to this new institution. And the Rebbe says, Yagaito Matzasa Tamin, if we will only try, we will definitely be successful. The Rebbe says, Yagaito Matzasa Tamin was said even on harder things, and definitely on these inyanim that one will put in the proper investment and the proper energy, will definitely be successful and fruitful. And talking about the Gemara of Anoitel Prute Me'i of Mizbarech, the Rebbe is mentioning the Gemara and Bava Basra. What's the Taich Bava Basra? Let's touch up the word Bava. There are 3 Masechtas in Gemara. It seems like these Masechtas were originally like one Masechta, but they were divided. Bava Kama meaning the first part, Bava Metzia the middle, and Bava Basra the last. Rebbe says, we're talking about Bava Basra, it's the last part of the Masechta, but what is negayah to us in Ruchni is that we are in the last days of Golus, and we have already demanded from the Rebbe and stressed it many, many times that the Rebbe should take us out of Golus. And right now we're already at a point where not only are we Erev Shabbos Acha Chatzois, Friday afternoon, but it's after Chatzois, but it's much later than that, and it's mamish that we are waiting for the coming of Mashiach. And here the Rebbe mentioned that there are those that may think and may ask, how is it that many times we mentioned that we are ready for the coming of Mashiach, and Mashiach should come and can come right away, right now. The Rebbe says that the truth is that it's brought out in Svarim, based on the Gemara at the end of Masechta Seita, that the Simonim, signs for the coming of Mashiach, we already have, and that is why there's the expression of Keitzin. Keitz means an end for Golus and the time for Gula, and there are many such Keitzin. What's the pshat? There are many such Keitzin, because the taich is that each time the world was taken, all the indications were such that we're taken ready for the coming of Mashiach. So we always keep on stressing it, because hoping that this is the moment when all the indications are such, and we're taken ready for the coming of Mashiach. And these inyanim are explained in Chassidus, and explained in Mamorim of the Alter Rebbe. The Rebbe also urged on another inyan of, which is Negei Lamaise, that in commemorating the 40 years, we should all contribute to tzedakah, and the contribution to tzedakah should also be in an amount of 40s. Okay, I'll go to the Anoitel Prute Me'iyev Mizbarech. Iyuv was a tzaddik. Okay. So anybody that got something from Iyuv, it brought him bracha. So the same thing the Rebbe is saying about taking funds, the participation from the Kupas Rabbeinu, it's also bringing bracha. In the inyan of Mashiach, the Rebbe elaborated a lot how it's brought out that there were many suitable times already for Mashiach to come, but he didn't come yet. So, kind of we keep on stressing it, because all the indications are here, and all the signs are here, especially all the simonim that Chazal give in the price, in the famous price at the end of Masechta Seita. So it's already all the leading to the high point that Mashiach should come.
Is there an expression at end of Ketzin?
Yes.
So it's like the end of all.
Kol ha-kitzin. The Rebbe uses it very often. It's expression in Gemara. All these Ketzin have already passed by. So therefore, it's definitely in all the indications and simonim for the coming of Mashiach, that the world is ready for the coming of Mashiach, we already have. So let him come.